I didn't know that a single unsharpened yellow pencil would become the moment everything finally broke. At first it looked like a perfect day. The backyard was full. Too full. Tables stretched from the patio all the way to the old oak tree at the fence line, each one covered in white tablecloths that fluttered slightly in the warm afternoon breeze. Sunlight reflected off glass cups and silverware, almost blinding if you looked too long. Laughter floated through the air mixed with the smell of catered food, roasted chicken, pasta, something creamy and expensive that no one in my family ever cooked at home. This was supposed to be a celebration. My son's graduation party. I stood near the edge of the yard, a plastic cup of lemonade sweating in my hand, watching my 18-year-old son stand near the gift table. He was still wearing his cap and gown, the black fabric heavy on his shoulders, the tassel brushing his cheek every time he turned his head. People were congratulating him. People who hadn't bothered to attend a single football game, science fair, or awards night in 4 years. Aunts, uncles, cousins whose names he'd learned to smile through, not because they were kind, but because that's what he'd been taught to do. Be polite. Don't react. Don't give them anything to use against you. I could tell he was tired. Not physically. Emotionally. He smiled anyway. As he always did. Then I saw Marcus. My brother-in-law. He walked toward my son like he owned the yard, like he owned the moment, like this celebration was just another stage built for him. He wore that familiar smirk, the one that never reached his eyes. The one I had learned over the years to dread. My sister followed 2 steps behind him. Always 2 steps. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, her hands clasped together like she was already apologizing for something that hadn't happened yet. That look on her face told me everything. He knew. She knew he was about to do something cruel. And she was going to let it happen. Marcus clapped his hands loudly as he approached, drawing attention. Heads turned. Conversations slowed. Even the music seemed to fade into the background. Well, he said, his voice booming with fake enthusiasm. Congratulations, graduate. My son straightened, hope flickering in his eyes. That's the part that hurt the most. Even after everything, he still wanted to believe people could surprise him in a good way. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket with exaggerated flair. I got you something special. My stomach tightened. I felt it before I understood it. Something was wrong. Marcus held out his closed fist, letting the moment stretch. People leaned in. My mother paused mid-bite and set her plate down. Someone near the buffet whispered, "Oh, like this was entertainment. Like this was fun." Marcus slowly opened his hand. Inside his palm sat a plain yellow pencil. Tip. Sharpened. The kind you buy in bulk because they're meant to be lost. For half a second there was silence. Then Marcus laughed. He laughed like he'd just delivered the punchline of the year. "Here you go," he said, pressing it into my son's hand. "That's all you'll ever need." A ripple of confused chuckles spread. Marcus wasn't done. "Community college doesn't require much, right?" he added, loud enough for everyone to hear. "No need to waste money on fancy gifts. Save that for something important." The laughter exploded. It didn't just come from one place. It spread like fire. My uncle slapped his knee. My cousin nearly choked on her wine. Someone actually applauded. I watched my mother press a napkin to her mouth, her shoulders shaking as she tried, and failed, to hide her laughter. I looked at my son. His smile froze. Not disappeared. Not cracked. It froze. His fingers closed around the pencil so tightly his knuckles turned white. I could see the muscles in his jaw flex as he swallowed whatever wanted to come out of his mouth. "Thank you," he said quietly. So quietly I almost missed it. Marcus cupped his ear and leaned in mockingly. "What was that?" "Speak up, community college boy." More laughter. Louder this time. My chest burned. I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. Once. Insistent. The timing was so perfect it almost felt unreal. I pulled it out without thinking. A message from Patricia, my assistant. "Board meeting in 30 minutes. They need your approval on the Henderson loan extension." I scrolled. Marcus Henderson. 72 hours until default if not approved today. I slowly looked up. Marcus was still basking in the attention, soaking in praise for his joke, while my sister stood beside him, pale and silent. My son had stepped away from the gift table now. He wasn't crying. That would come later. Alone. Where no one could see. He'd learned that showing pain in this family only made things worse. I slipped my phone back into my hand and started walking. One step. Then another. The laughter died as people noticed me moving toward Marcus. My sister's eyes widened. "Wow," I said calmly, stopping in front of him. "That was quite a gift." Marcus grinned. "Just being practical. No point investing in someone who's not aiming very high." I nodded slowly. "Right," I said. "Practical." I lifted my phone. "Speaking of practical decisions, the board meeting starts in 25 minutes. His eyes flicked to the screen, then back to my face. Confusion crept in. "Your loan extension," I continued quietly. "They're waiting on my recommendation." The color drained from his face. And in that moment, standing there with my son humiliated behind me and a cheap pencil clenched in his hand, I realized something. This wasn't just a graduation party anymore. This was the beginning of justice. And Marcus had no idea what was about to happen. The backyard felt different after I spoke. Not quieter. Heavier. Like the air itself had thickened and settled on everyone's shoulders. Faces that had been twisted in laughter moments ago now looked stiff, uncertain, suddenly aware that they were standing in the middle of something they didn't understand. Forks hovered halfway to mouths. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the birds in the oak tree seemed to pause. Marcus tried to laugh it off. "You're bluffing," he said, but the confidence in his voice had cracked. "You can't seriously bring business into a family party." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I unlocked my phone and opened the email chain. My thumb moved slowly, deliberately, like every motion carried weight. "Marcus Henderson," I read aloud. "Henderson Commercial Properties. $70 million development loan. Extension pending. Default imminent." I turned the screen so he could see it. Clear. Undeniable. His name. His company. His future. The smirk vanished. My sister grabbed his arm, fingers digging into his sleeve. "Marcus," she whispered. "Please. Don't do this." But he had already done it. The pencil. The laughter. The years of little comments, little stabs, little humiliations that everyone pretended were jokes. My mother's voice cut through the silence, trembling. "I don't understand," she said. "What's happening?" I looked at her, then back at Marcus. 6 months ago," I said calmly, "Marcus applied for a loan extension. Cost overruns. Contractor issues. Planning failures. The kind of problems that happen when someone builds something bigger than their ability to sustain." Marcus clenched his jaw. "This is inappropriate," he snapped. "We'll discuss business later." "You brought business here," I replied. "That pencil was an investment decision. You decided my son wasn't worth anything." I paused. "So I decided we could talk about investments." My son's voice came from behind me, quiet but steady. "Jokes are funny," he said. That wasn't funny. Every head turned. For a moment I forgot everyone else existed. I just felt this sharp, swelling pride in my chest. Pride mixed with something painful. Because it had taken 4 years of swallowing insults for him to finally say one sentence out loud. Marcus scrambled. "Look, I'm sorry if feelings were hurt," he said. "It was just a joke. You're being dramatic." My sister stepped forward, putting herself between us. "Please," she said to me, eyes wet already. "He didn't mean it. You know how he is. He jokes. It's his way." His way. I looked at her. I thought of every dinner where my son had been quietly torn down. Every holiday. Every family gathering. When my son made honor roll and Marcus asked if they gave out trophies for showing up. When he won the science fair and Marcus called it playing with baking soda. When he got accepted to college and Marcus made sure everyone knew it wasn't impressive enough. His way, I said softly, has been belittling my son for 4 years. The yard went completely silent. No clinking plates. No music. No laughter. Even the caterers stood frozen. "I didn't know," my mother whispered. I looked at her gently. "You laughed," I said. "Every time." My uncle looked down. My cousin stared into her wine. Marcus's phone rang. The sound was sharp. Ugly. Like a crack in glass. He pulled it out with shaking hands. He went even paler. "That's probably Robert," I said calmly. "Your business partner. He called me this morning. Very worried. Mention dissolving the partnership if the extension doesn't go through. Marcus answered, voice tight. Not now, Robert. Pause. I said not now. He hung up and shoved the phone back into his pocket like it had burned him. I checked my watch. 20 minutes, I said. The board is waiting. Marcus stared at me, jaw trembling. What do you want? He asked through gritted teeth. The question felt small. Small compared to the years of damage. An apology, I said. Fine, he snapped. I'm sorry. Happy. I apologize for the pencil. For everything. I shook my head. Not to me. I pointed behind me. To him. My son still stood there, the pencil clutched in his hand, looking smaller than he should have on what was supposed to be one of the biggest days of his life. Marcus turned to face him. The arrogance was gone now. Replaced by panic. I apologize, Marcus said. The pencil was inappropriate. I shouldn't have mocked your college choice. My son looked at me. Then back at Marcus. His voice was quiet but it carried. Why? He asked. Why did you spend 4 years making fun of everything I did? What did I ever do to you? Marcus opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Nothing came out. Then my sister spoke. He's jealous, she said. Everyone stared at her. Even Marcus. She looked at him with something like pity. You've been jealous since the beginning, she continued. Since she started dating someone educated. Someone with a real career. Someone whose son might actually surpass you. That's not true, Marcus protested weakly. It is, she said. I watched you tear down a child because you were afraid of being overshadowed. My phone buzzed again. Phew. 15 minutes. Board is assembled. I need to make a call, I said. I turned toward the house. My son followed me without a word. Behind us, the party didn't restart. It dissolved. Murmurs. Awkward whispers. Shuffling feet. Inside the kitchen, the noise faded. I sat at the table and opened the Henderson file. My son sat across from me, still holding the pencil. Are you really going to deny his loan? He asked softly. I looked at him. At the pencil, I corrected gently. At 4 years of cruelty. At character. At risk. At trust. He nodded slowly. But Aunt Sarah will be affected too. Smart kid. Always thinking beyond himself. I'll protect her, I said. But consequences matter. He placed the pencil on the table between us. I'm not going to community college, he said. I blinked. What? I got accepted to Stanford, he said quietly. Full academic scholarship. I found out last week. The air left my lungs. My heart swelled and shattered at the same time. When were you going to tell me? Tonight, he said. After everyone left. Just us. I pulled him into a hug. My phone rang. Phew. The board is ready, she said. Should I connect you? I looked at my son. At the pencil. At the backyard through the window. Connect me, I said. The line clicked. 5 voices greeted me. We have the Henderson file, the chairman said. Your recommendation? I looked at the pencil one last time. Such a small thing. So much cruelty inside it. Denied, I said clearly. Risk assessment indicates poor character judgment. I cannot recommend approval. Silence. Then. Voted. The board concurs. Extension denied. The line went dead. My son stared at me. You really did it. I really did. I picked up the pencil. And snapped it in half. Now, I said softly, we celebrate you properly. For a moment neither of us spoke. The broken pencil lay on the kitchen table between us like evidence. 2 useless halves of something that had never been worth much to begin with, yet somehow had carried years of contempt inside it. You really did it, my son said again, softer this time. I nodded. I could hear the backyard through the open window. Not laughter anymore. Just fragments of sound, chairs scraping, voices lowered, the awkward chaos of people realizing a performance had gone terribly wrong. What happens now? He asked. I exhaled slowly. Now, I said, we let the truth do what it's always supposed to do. The back door creaked open. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. My sister appeared in the doorway. Her mascara had run down her cheeks in uneven streaks. She looked smaller somehow, Like the confident woman she used to be had finally stepped out of the shadow she'd been living in for years. "He's outside," she said quietly. "Crying." I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt finality. "Robert called again," she continued. "The partnership is over. He said it's done. Everything Marcus built is gone." I shook my head gently. "Everything he built on loans he couldn't repay," I corrected. "It was already failing. I just stopped pretending it wasn't." She nodded. "I know," she whispered. "I've known for months. I just didn't want to face it." She looked at my son. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry I didn't protect you. I laughed when I should have stood up. I chose my husband over my nephew." My son stood. Without hesitation, he walked toward her and wrapped his arms around her. She collapsed against him, sobbing into his shoulder. "It's okay," he said gently, patting her back. "It's going to be okay." I felt something tighten in my chest. Even now, after everything, he was still the bigger person. Kinder than they deserved. Outside I heard car doors slam. One by one. The party was ending early. Good. It had never really been a celebration anyway. Just another stage for judgment, comparison, and cruelty disguised as humor. My mother appeared next. She stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure she was welcome anymore. "I don't understand what just happened," she said. I looked at her. "Marcus gave your grandson a pencil and told him it was all he'd ever need," I said. "I showed him what need actually looks like." Her eyes dropped to the broken pencil. Then to my son. "He got into Stanford," she whispered. "Full ride," my son confirmed. Her face crumpled. "And we treated him like he was nothing." I shook my head. "Not nothing," I said. "Just not worth investing in." She didn't argue. She turned and left without another word. Through the window, I watched her gather her things and walk away with my uncle. They looked older than they had an hour earlier. Smaller. Like people who had just realized they'd backed the wrong side of history. My phone buzzed one final time. Fisha. Henderson default filed. Board adjourned. Congratulations on another successful risk assessment. I deleted the message. Turned the phone off. "What now?" my son asked. I smiled. "How we order pizza," I said. "And you tell me everything about Stanford. Every detail." His face lit up. "Can we get the good pizza?" he asked. "Not the cheap one. The best," I promised. "Because you deserve the best. Not a pencil. Not scraps. Not love that comes with conditions." We ordered from the expensive place downtown. While we waited, he showed me his acceptance letter. His scholarship details. His dorm assignment. He talked about classes, professors, dreams he'd been afraid to say out loud. And I listened. Really listened. Making up for all the moments I'd let other people's voices drown out what mattered most. The pizza arrived. We ate at the kitchen table as the sun dipped below the horizon. On his way to grab plates, my son tossed the broken pencil into the trash. He wouldn't need it where he was going. And neither would anyone who thought small things defined big futures. Later that night, after the house had gone completely quiet, I stood alone in the kitchen. The lights were dim. The counter still smelled faintly of pizza and lemon cleaner. Outside, the yard looked smaller without people in it, like it had finally exhaled after holding too much for too long. I opened the trash can. I don't know why. The broken pencil sat right on top. 2 yellow pieces. Eraser cracked. Wood splintered. Something so small. Something that had carried so much disrespect inside it. I thought about how easily people decide another person's value. How casually they hand out judgments. How laughter can turn cruelty into something socially acceptable. Something people excuse because it's easier than standing up. I closed the trash. Upstairs, my son laughed softly in his room. Probably reading something about Stanford. Or imagining a future he no longer felt guilty for wanting. And that's when it hit me. The pencil was never really about school. It was about power. Marcus hadn't mocked my son because of community college. He mocked him because humiliation made him feel taller. Because tearing down a child was easier than fixing himself. Because people who feel small try to keep others smaller. And today, finally, that stopped working. Justice didn't come in the form of yelling or revenge. It came as truth. It came as consequences. It came when someone who thought he could laugh without cost learned that every action leaves a footprint. I went upstairs and knocked on my son's door. "Yeah," he called. I stepped inside. I want you to remember something, I said. He looked up. Today wasn't about ruining someone, I continued. It was about protecting someone. Me? He asked. Yes, I said. And every future version of you. He nodded slowly. I think, he said, this is the first time I didn't feel small in front of them. My throat tightened. That's because you never were, I said. They just needed you to believe you were. He smiled. A real smile. The kind that doesn't ask permission. That night, I lay awake thinking about how many people live their lives carrying invisible pencils handed to them by others. Symbols of what they're supposedly worth. Too small. Not good enough. Aim lower. Stay quiet. And how dangerous it is when good people stay silent while those messages are passed around like jokes. If there's one thing I learned that day, it's this. Never underestimate the damage of small cruelty. And never underestimate the power of finally saying, enough. Because justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits. But when it arrives, it doesn't miss. And to anyone listening to this who has ever been handed a pencil by someone who wanted you to feel less, remember this. Your worth was never theirs to define. Your future was never theirs to limit. And one day, whether they're ready or not, the truth will meet them exactly where they stand. If this story made you feel something, anger, pride, relief, or hope, then don't let it end here. Stand up for someone who can't. Speak when silence feels easier. And never laugh at pain just because everyone else does. Because the smallest moments are often the ones that decide who we become. And if you believe stories like this matter, if you believe justice matters, then stay with us. There are more stories to tell. The house felt different once the door closed behind the last car. Quiet but not empty. The kind of quiet that follows a storm, when the air still vibrates with everything that was just destroyed. My son leaned back in his chair, pizza box between us, grease-stained napkins scattered across the table. His cap sat on the counter now abandoned. For the first time that day he looked relaxed. Not guarded. Not braced. Just himself. You know, he said slowly, I always wondered if they were right. I looked at him. About what? That maybe I really wasn't enough, he admitted. That if I had gone somewhere better, done something bigger, they would have treated me differently. My chest tightened. They would have found something else, I said. People who need to feel superior don't stop when you succeed. They just move the goalposts. He nodded like that was something he'd already learned the hard way. I practiced what I'd say if Uncle Marcus ever asked about my future, he continued. I imagined defending myself, explaining my choices, proving I wasn't a joke. He looked at the trash can, at the pencil. But today, he said quietly, I realized something. I waited. I didn't owe him an explanation, he said. And I didn't need his approval. I smiled. That realization, that moment, was worth more than any degree. Outside, headlights flashed briefly through the window. Another car leaving. Another witness to consequences. Do you feel bad? He asked suddenly. For him. I thought about Marcus standing in the yard crying. About the empire built on borrowed money. On shortcuts. On arrogance. No, I said honestly. I feel sad that it took this long. But not bad. He absorbed that. Justice doesn't always look kind, I continued. But it's supposed to be fair. A knock echoed softly at the front door. We both froze. I stood and opened it. Marcus stood there. Alone. No confidence. No audience. No smirk. Just a man stripped of everything he thought made him important. I know I don't deserve this, he said, voice hoarse. But I needed to say something. I didn't invite him in. You were right, he continued. About character. About risk. I've spent my whole life pretending I earned things I didn't. He looked past me at my son. I was afraid of you, he admitted. Afraid you'd become what I never could. My son stepped forward. You didn't have to destroy me to protect yourself, he said. Marcus nodded, tears in his eyes. I know. There was nothing left to say. Marcus turned and walked away. No dramatic exit. No final speech. Just consequences following him into the dark. I closed the door. My son exhaled. That, he said, felt finished. I nodded. Because it was. I gathered the empty pizza boxes and threw them away. The trash can closed with a soft click. The same sound it made when the pencil had landed inside earlier. Endings didn't always come with explosions. Sometimes they came quietly. With clarity. With truth. With the knowledge that something broken had finally stopped hurting people. My son stood and stretched. "Tomorrow," he said, smiling, "I'm going to start packing." I laughed. "Tomorrow," I said, "we celebrate again. Just us." He nodded. No audience. No judgment. No laughter at someone else's expense. Only pride. Only love. Only the future.